When we look back at the most brutal punishments in history, we often see the work of sadistic rulers acting on impulse. In reality, these acts functioned as precise instruments of ancient justice. Ruling powers faced a constant practical problem. They needed to maintain absolute control over their populations, but every execution or public torture required time, labor, and money. They had to weigh the logistical cost of the punishment against the obedience it purchased. This chart maps the return on investment of state-sanctioned suffering. On the horizontal axis, we have the logistical cost and time required. On the vertical axis, the resulting psychological deterrence. A method like blowing from a gun requires minimal effort and produces little sustained terror. On the other extreme, scaphism demands days of active maintenance to extract the maximum psychological impact. To understand how rulers navigated this grid, we can evaluate their methods across 4 specific state goals: maintaining military discipline, extracting information, swift elimination, and creating maximum spectacle. Analyzing these systems, whether for historical research or world building, requires looking past the victim's pain to identify the specific political currency the state intended to extract. A primary challenge for any ancient empire was keeping its own military in check. A ruler needed a way to crush a mutiny or enforce extreme loyalty without executing their entire fighting force. The Roman military used a process called decimation to handle capital offenses like desertion. A cohort of about 480 soldiers was divided into groups of 10. They drew lots, and the man who pulled the shortest straw was killed by his 9 peers. By forcing the surviving soldiers to stone or club their own comrade to death, the command structure embedded a deep shared trauma directly within the ranks. The state accepted a steep trade-off. This system immediately halted rebellions by diffusing the guilt across the entire unit, but it scarred long-term morale and instantly wiped out 10% of their active military assets. You see a similar goal achieved through non-lethal means in the Yakuza practice of yubitsume, where a member amputates portions of their own little finger to atone for an offense. The removal of that specific digit severely weakens a person's ability to firmly grip a sword. The offender physically loses their capacity to fight independently, forcing them into physical reliance on their superior. Both the Roman and the Yakuza systems sacrifice a portion of the subject's physical capability to secure permanent group reliance. The offender remains alive, but permanently diminished. When the state's objective shifted from discipline to gathering actionable intelligence, they needed a completely different mechanical approach. Simply killing a subject provides no answers. The rack was an engineered solution to this problem. The victim was strapped to a rectangular wooden frame, and executioners used a system of levers and pulleys to stretch the arms and legs in opposite directions. The operational advantage here was exact control. The interrogator could stretch the body to the brink of dislocating limbs, pause the mechanism, and demand a confession, holding the tension indefinitely. The system had a critical logistical flaw. The extreme tension reliably produced confessions, but victims desperate to stop the pain would invent whatever lies the interrogator wanted to hear. Meanwhile, the torn ligaments left the subject completely crippled. Using the human body as an information extraction device almost guarantees the total destruction of its future utility as a working asset. When elimination was the sole objective, governments had to choose between purely pragmatic disposal and highly theatrical demonstrations of power. Strapping a victim to the mouth of a cannon and firing it is an exercise in brutal efficiency. The blast instantly scatters the body over a 100-yard radius. It demands zero sustained upkeep from the executioner and completes the job in milliseconds. The trade-off is that the victim dies instantly, leaving authorities with zero psychological leverage to extract last-minute compliance. In parts of Asia, particularly India, rulers used a radically different approach to elimination. They utilized heavy war elephants to crush the condemned. The overhead costs here were astronomical. The state had to capture, house, feed, and train massive animals for years, specifically teaching them to step on the non-vital limbs of a human body first. Rulers absorbed that cost because the slow, highly orchestrated dismantling of a criminal projected absolute, undeniable authority to everyone watching the event unfold. By choosing an expensive, theatrical execution over a cheap one, A state is actively investing in public submission. There is a final category of punishment where states prioritize legendary psychological deterrence over every standard of logistical logic. The Brazen Bull required immense upfront engineering. Metal workers cast a life-sized hollow bronze statue equipped with a specialized system of internal acoustic pipes. The return on this investment was entirely theatrical. As a fire heated the bronze from below, the internal pipes converted the chaotic screams of the person burning inside into the orchestrated sound of a bellowing beast. It took massive initial funding to build, but it provided the state with a highly reusable asset that cemented a terrifying reputation across borders. Even the bull is practical compared to the ancient Persian method of scaphism, the absolute pinnacle of sustained human degradation. The logistical demands were absurd. The state suspended a victim between two boats, force-fed them large quantities of milk and honey to induce severe diarrhea, smeared their body with the same mixture, and then actively monitored the resulting insect infestations for up to 17 days. It was a terribly labor-intensive process for the guards. It succeeded by shifting the focal point of the horror away from the moment of death, weaponizing the prolongation of life itself. These extremes demonstrate that the most terrifying punishments occur when a state actively refuses to let the victim die until the surrounding public has been sufficiently terrorized. Historical cruelty functioned as a calculated expenditure of state resources to achieve a specific outcome. If we build a decision matrix for this, the top node is always the state's objective. If you are designing a pragmatic, fast-moving military empire, the state should utilize highly efficient methods like artillery execution or decimation to maintain order. But if your society is built on religious or psychological control, the state must employ complex, highly symbolic methods. The Aztecs, for example, maintained cosmic and societal order through public sacrifice. Cutting open a victim on an elevated stone altar and holding their heart to the sky was a required civic performance. When building your own world or evaluating history, remember the trade-off. Pragmatism saves resources, but sacrifices terror, while grand spectacle requires massive societal buy-in to function. The gravity of these historical punishments lies in the fact that a society decided this level of agony was worth a massive, calculated investment of their time.